This is Orson Welles. Lobbying is against the law. In at least one state, it's a crime. And in a dozen more, it's a felony. In Washington, there were 96 senators and 129 lobbyists in 1924. Today, there are still 96 senators, but there are 6,000 lobbyists.
Orson Welles, brought to you by Eversharp, makers of Eversharp Skyline pens, repeater pencils, desk sets, and Eversharp Red Top Lead.
There are three branches of our government: administrative, legislative, and the executive. That's what we were taught in school. But actually, there's a fourth division in our democracy, and it's just here that democracy ends and Mr. Hitler's kind of government begins. Says Mr. Hitler, "The greatness of any organization lies in its insistence on its own right, intolerant of anything else." Well, that's the motto of the lobbyists in Washington. Lobbying began back in the earliest days of the Republic. The term lobby started with the first Congress in 1789, when citizens used to swarm the lobby of the legislature, trying to coerce the members to vote a certain way. And pretty soon, there came into being the real lobbyist, the paid agent of a pressure group, seeking privilege at the people's expense. That means we have two governments: government by election and appointment, according to our Constitution, and next to it, another government, immensely powerful, a secret government by organized pressure groups, an invisible government run by the influential minority. Well, take the real estate lobby. Say you're getting federal aid to build a home or to maintain it. You've got rent ceilings for protection, and you're benefiting by public housing and federal slum clearance programs the country over. How long exactly do you think you'd have these benefits if the many real estate groups organized in Washington today for the express purpose of sabotaging governmental aid to the average man got to be a little stronger, just a little more powerful? The real estate lobby wants to keep rents up. They want to supervise all housing and home loans. They want monopoly, profits, regardless of the consequences. You may find yourself without a home, but what do they care? As Hitler says, insist on your own rightness, intolerant of anything else. And lobbies beget lobbies. In order to fight the aviation monopoly, 16 airlines have banded together in Washington to fight the Pan American monopoly. And that lobby has a long, slow pull ahead. Powerful Pan American's president, Juan Trippe, wants no other fingers in his international aviation pie. He has a lobby, too. Everybody has a lobby who can afford to pay for one. Affairs of state are argued not only by the men elected to conduct that argument, but by men paid off by somebody to win one side of it. Many lobbies spend more than $1 million every year. I know of one that spends a half as much again to, quote, represent the utilities companies on all matters of pending legislation before Congress, unquote. Well, you can guess what that one's all about. By the last count, that lobby has 28 committees working in 38 states. They got to work not long ago in the public schools. They made a study of textbooks dealing with public utilities questions. The lobby circularized local companies, urging them to get to work on local school boards, and through personal friendships, they promoted the removal of what they call bad books. The plan worked very well. In the state of Illinois, for instance, 635 high schools, more than three-quarters of the total number, were soon using specially prepared utilities literature in the classrooms. Somebody asked one of the agents of this utilities lobby if there was any method of publicity they hadn't used. He answered, "Only one that I know of, and that's skywriting." Says Hugo Black, Justice of the Supreme Court, "The lobby has reached such a position of power that it threatens government itself." Well, tonight I'm going to expose the most secret and potentially the most dangerous of all lobbies. Most of you probably never heard of it. But first, Ken Niles.
It isn't an ordinary occurrence, but when it does occur, it makes its mark. Sometimes those people, those organizations who do great things, suddenly do something greater. Boeing did that when they made the Flying Fortress. Norman Rockwell did it when he painted the Four Freedoms. And Eversharp did it when they created, at your command, the Command Performance Gift Set. When you have put all you have into something you do, it is difficult to say you have done something better. Yet that is exactly what happened in this beautiful all-gold Eversharp pen and pencil set. Made of 14-karat gold throughout, streamlined, with a simplicity of design that is, and always has been, the essence of good taste. This set can be engraved, as beautiful as fine jewelry, with name, date, military rank, or occasion. And both pen and pencil have deep pocket clips that meet military regulations. There are a limited number of Eversharp Command Performance sets at distinguished Eversharp dealers. They are priced at $125, handsomely packaged in a distinctive presentation case, with service on pen and new featherweight repeater pencil guaranteed. Not for years, not for life, but guaranteed forever. See this set. Compare. Comparison proves. Give Eversharp, and you give the finest. And now, Orson Welles.
In spite of the police and the FBI, a lot of rackets are still in the big time. They don't get much publicity. One of the biggest gets none at all. This one's just about as old as highway robbery, and it's a good deal more successful. It's the fortune-telling racket. A conservative estimates put the fortune-tellers yearly take at anything from $10 million up. A good hunk of that goes to the small operators, the $2 swamis and the gypsy queens. But most people don't know that there's big money in fortune-telling. Like a certain gamblers group, the big shots are organized, and like the gambling gang, they call themselves the syndicate. 10 people run the syndicate right now, some of the slickest workers ever known to the con games. They've divided the country between them. Well, I saw one of these big shots a little while ago. We were both guests at a dinner party. My hostess had promised me she had a wonderful man coming to the house. He's not a common fortune teller, she said to me, not at all. Mr. X is gifted with strange powers. He's lived for years in a lamasery in Tibet. Well, he came in right after that, and I didn't spoil the party by admitting that I knew him. He used another name 3 years ago, and he's had to get out of several different states on very short notice. For all I know, that's why he left the lamasery. Maybe the Tibetan police got wise to him. If I thought he'd mind my being there, I flattered myself. He was a smash hit, too. He started in with some impromptu readings. He told one poor woman never to travel by air. And he told a man he was going to lose some valuable property. He was probably right about that. If Mr. X could get his hands on the property, the man would certainly lose it. Well, I won't describe the whole show, but you can take my word for it. This particular Tibetan is good at sleight of hand. Besides being a showman and a skillful practicing psychologist, he can lead people on and draw them out without letting them know he's telling him anything. And, of course, that's half the game. And he's good, all right. Probably makes $100,000 a year. Gets $25 for private reading, but Mr. X isn't in it for the fees. He gives his readings, and he waits. Eventually, the sucker comes in, the right sucker, the perfect setup. And when he knows he's safe, he goes to work. Maybe it's a rich widow. She's lost a jewel, and he tells her where to find it. She looks in the place he said to look, and my goodness, there it is. Now she'll go for anything. She has money to invest, but he begs her not to gamble with a large sum, just a small amount. My dear lady, he tells her, after all, I'm not infallible. She knows better. She makes an investment according to his advice, and what do you know? She doubles her money. That's the come-on. You've seen it work sometimes with the shell game. Well, it always works with Mr. X. Now his nice, fat little old widow is ready for the kill. She goes for the oil stock or the gold mine, and she goes in a big way. Before she finds out she's been skinned, our Tibetan friend is out of town. Or maybe he doesn't even leave. Maybe the sucker told him something he can use. Maybe she mentioned a little indiscretion in their heart-to-heart talk, some trifling confidence, just enough to keep her mouth shut. Blackmail, you see, is a regular part of the operation. Sometimes the blackmail's used for insurance, but just as often it's the basis of the whole squeeze. Well, now, it's true there are hundreds of these seers, these so-called spiritual advisors. who don't go for blackmail or selling phony stocks, who live safely and well off the straight readings. And I'll admit that in some instances, these people are sincere, but, well, what of it? I charge that all fortune tellers are dangerous. I charge that even the most honest men and women who think they're psychic and give advice on that basis are hurting the people they advise. They're meddling with precious things. Too often, private questions of the heart, family matters, serious business decisions are left entirely to their hunches or to the ingenuity of their invention. The psychic tries to take the place of the priest and the psychologist, the lawyer and the doctor, and unlike them, he has no responsibility to God or to science or to law. And if you think there isn't much fortune-telling anymore, you're wrong. The racket is booming. Today, there are more fortune-tellers operating in America than ever before. A lot of them are working in Hollywood. There's only one community supporting more of them, and here, I'm sure I'm going to surprise you. And a little unpleasantly, too. Ladies and gentlemen, there are more fortune-tellers in Washington, D.C. There are more of these racketeers in our capital than anywhere else in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, several of your congressmen and more than one U.S. senator consult these phony mystics at regular weekly periods. The hanky-panky experts actually come to their offices in Congress on appointed days. Well, now, that's a new kind of lobbyist, the fortune teller. I ask you to imagine how effective he could be and how dangerous. He's the most sinister of all lobbyists because you can't know what he's really after or who, besides the sucker, pays him off. It could mean that a lobbyist interested in killing a law or in getting it passed won't see your congressman about it. He'll see your congressman's fortune teller. Now, there may be more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in our philosophy. There may be something, a little something in astrology or palmistry or phrenology or necromancy or geomancy or clairvoyance or foresight. There may be some little piece of truth in one or all of these strange jimmies and picklocks supposed to pry open the ultimate and the unanswerable, but we have a right to expect of our representatives in Congress that they rely on their wisdom and their best judgment and on their consciences, not on the lines of their palms or the bumps on their heads. When they need advice, let them consult the people who voted for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Orson Welles and the Eversharp Almanac, a new radio program brought to you by the makers of Eversharp pens and pencils. There is no better gift for Christmas than an Eversharp presentation set. And while you're at the pen counter shopping for somebody else, get an Eversharp Skyliner for yourself. You'll like the streamlined two-tone striped cap and harmonizing solid color barrels, the perfect balance of this pen, and finger-fitting comfort. Magic Feed prevents flooding or leaking high on a plane, so at ground level, too. Deep Pocket Clip meets military regulations. Designed to sell for $8.75, mass production economies bring you the Eversharp Skyliner pen for only $4. The complete set with matching Eversharp repeater pencil is only $8.75, the price of competitive guaranteed pens alone. And service on pen and pencil is guaranteed, not for years, not for life, but guaranteed forever. Compare. Comparison proves. Buy Eversharp, and you buy the finest.
Orson Welles again. This being an almanac, I thought I ought to mention that the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock 324 years ago today. According to the ancients, this is a favorable day for a man to be born. Shear sheep and reap fruits. The moon is full tomorrow night, and our quotation for the week comes from G.K. Chesterton. With all our wisdom, there's one thing none of us can ever know: whether the world is old or young. Join us next week, please. Until then, I remain, as always, obediently yours.